Thanks for joining me here today. Welcome to winter in Manitoba. This year has been like no other. COVID's impacted all of us, some more than others. I want to begin by offering my sincere condolences, our government's sincere condolences on behalf of all Manitobans to the too many families who have lost a loved one to COVID this year, and to the many Manitobans who are battling this virus right now as well. Our thoughts and prayers go out to you. COVID-19 has handed us new challenges in many ways, greater than many of us have ever experienced before. And this virus has challenged each of us to become more resilient, more innovative, and more determined than we ever thought necessary. Our number one priority in the face of this unprecedented pandemic is to protect our most vulnerable Manitobans and ensure that our healthcare system's there for all Manitobans when they need it. Notre priorité numéro 1 dans cette pandémie est de protéger nos Manitobains les plus vulnérables et de veiller à ce que notre système de santé soit là pour tous les Manitobains quand ils ont besoin. And that is why over a month ago we moved all of Manitoba to red or critical on the pandemic response system, and we implemented new public health orders to halt the spread of this virus and to save lives. And I want to say thank you to Manitobans. These current restrictions, which are in place until January 8th, are starting to work, thanks to you. And they will only continue to work with the cooperation and the determination and dedication of all Manitobans. Last week was monumental for Manitobans. The first 900 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine were administered to the first priority group of healthcare providers as identified by our vaccine leadership team. And that is bringing some long-awaited hope to many Manitobans. And as more vaccines arrive, and we are able to immunize more Manitobans, I must continue to remind Manitobans that we are not through COVID yet. And we must continue to follow the doctor's orders, follow the fundamentals, and save lives. This is how we make all the sacrifices that you've made thus far pay dividends, by continuing to be determined as we move forward. We have 90 days of duty ahead of us, and we need to exercise our duty responsibly, as other generations did. We have that challenge now. We know that many people have made sacrifices through this process, and all of you, to some degree, are part of those sacrifices. But as we look ahead to the new year, it is important to recognize that a healthy economy must be part of our COVID recovery strategy. And that's why we've been working, and we're going to continue to work side by side with all Manitoba businesses to help them do what they do best. Employ Manitobans, offer services to Manitobans rely on. We know that many of our small businesses are restricted right now in being able to do that, and that's why we've been offering very strong supports to our small businesses, not to make up for the profits that they're not going to get through this season, but to assist them in bridging through. Hence our Manitoba Bridge Grant, which is $5,000 in direct support to any Manitoba business, nonprofit, or charity that has been adversely affected as a result of the COVID-19 public health orders that came into effect earlier this year. Since online intake began on November 16, for the first stream of the Bridge Grant, more than 8,400 businesses have received over $42 million in direct financial support. I'd emphasize again, this is not loans, as many programs, some of the federal programs are loan related. Many provinces have loan programs. This is a grant program, which means that there isn't a repayment required. The businesses will be able to target that money for any use they determine is appropriate. We recognize not all businesses operate a storefront too, which is why earlier this month we expanded the Manitoba Bridge Grant to include home-based businesses who've seen their market and source of income greatly reduced because of public health orders that limit things like gathering sizes and restrict other activities. Since that intake began, more than 140 additional businesses have received close to, or more than, $500,000 in direct financial support too. I would remind Manitoba business people that the deadline for applications for both these streams of the bridge grant is December 31st, and this year, of course, and I would encourage all eligible businesses to apply. We have committed $250 million, more than $250 million so far to protect Manitoba's business community at this critical time. And we've taken a number of other measures, dozens of other measures to assist in providing lower costs for Manitoba small businesses and Manitoba taxpayers and citizens as well. For specifically the small businesses, that's the bridge grant I referred to earlier, but we have also been working with the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce and Economic Development Winnipeg on designing a plan with their help for the allocation of $50 million that can be used to support our small businesses throughout the province as well. We've enlisted the business leaders in our community to help us by making recommendations on how to help businesses to recover and to succeed in the long term. And today I'm pleased to announce we're providing $5 million through the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce to implement one of those recommendations. The Chamber will use this financial relief to help restaurants who had been traditionally using dine-in model and have suffered as a consequence naturally of our rules and restrictions on gathering sizes and the like since the red restrictions came into play. Many restaurants throughout Manitoba have shifted from a dine-in model over to a pickup and delivery model to serve the public. I encourage you to support those businesses. By shifting this way, they've encouraged greater safety. They've assisted Manitoba customers in staying home rather than going out, which is good. And whether a restaurant does its own deliveries or uses a third-party service, this comes at an added cost to those businesses. So the dine-in restaurant relief program is going to be delivered by the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce in partnership with the Manitoba Restaurant and Food Services Association. And it will provide a rebate to restaurants across Manitoba to help offset costs related to food delivery services. The Chambers and the Restaurant Association will have more information about the rebate for eligible businesses in the near future. But this program will rebate restaurants that are considered to be primarily dine-in and who have shifted to a delivery model as a result of Manitoba's COVID prevention orders. This has impacted approximately 2,000 Manitoba small businesses. Today's announcement's the second project that's rolled out through our partnership with these business advisors that I referenced earlier. Earlier in the month, $1.5 million was committed to help develop and promote local business initiatives. And a portion of that funding was also allocated for the Good Local online shopping platform and delivery service in the capital region that connects local makers and merchants with buyers. I want to stress that businesses that have received provincial funding, such as our previous GAP program, which over 10,000 businesses did apply for and were approved, and which distributed over $60 million in direct financial assistance, again, grants, not repayable loans, that these companies that receive that funding, $6,000 per business, are also welcome and encouraged to apply for the Manitoba Bridge Grant I referenced earlier and the new dine-in restaurant relief program as well. We're advancing this financial support now to help bridge our businesses through this challenging time. And it is a challenging time for all of us, but most certainly for the small businesses of our province that have put so much at stake to provide services to us. This is a very difficult time for them. And I would say that our programs have been designed to make funds available to assist in the right way, we hope at the right time for our businesses. Our programs are among the most generous in the country, and they are designed to help bridge our businesses through these challenging times so that they're there to recover as we recover from this global pandemic. I'll put this plug in again. As we approach the holiday season and we look ahead to the new year, I would encourage all Manitobans to shop safely, and I'd encourage them to shop local too. The best thing we can do for our businesses, for our healthcare system, for our loved ones, for our vulnerable communities is to bend that COVID curve down, and that means don't let COVID up. We've got our boot on it. Let's keep it right there. We did it once. We can do it again. We need everyone on Team Manitoba, no exceptions. This is a team effort. We all have a role to play in protecting ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, and our actions now determine how we'll start the new year. Well, that new year is going to come an opportunity for us to give each other the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. Every generation has its challenges. Previous generations of Manitobans made amazing sacrifices in the fight for freedom around the world, and they fought off natural disasters of incredible proportion. This is our time to shine. This is our hard Christmas. Some say it could be the hardest one that many of us will ever face. But we'll get through this, and we'll get through it together, and we'll do that by doing what our predecessors did and what Manitobans have always done, by doing our duty. This is our duty. Our duty is to follow these public health orders. Our duty is to keep each other safe. Our duty is to earn the hope that we can put in the window, not just for these vaccines, because they may not be here in sufficient numbers for some time now. Our duty is to celebrate again everything we have, separately, but together this year, so that next year we can be together again. 90 days of duty. Do your duty for 90 days. That's the key. And while you're doing your duty, remember how blessed we are to live in this incredible province, in this incredible country, at this amazing, challenging time. It's crucial we follow the fundamentals. Remember, stay home. Only leave your home for essential purposes. Stay home when you're sick. As our Deputy Public Health Officer said yesterday, and just another reminder, don't go to work when you have symptoms. Stay home when you're sick. Get tested. Stay home if any member of your family is sick. Don't socialize with people outside your household. Wash your hands, cover your cough, practice physical distancing, wear a mask, and have a great Christmas and a great holiday season. And then we'll all have a great new year together. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters on the line, you will have one preliminary and one follow-up question. And up first this morning from CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Hello there, Mr. Premier. I'll get onto the restaurants thing, but just off the top of my mind here, in the pandemic enforcement bulletin that was issued about an hour before you spoke, there were 35 tickets that were handed out for people for infractions involving gatherings at private residences. The public health officers, the doctors, they don't talk about enforcement. Are you directing enforcement to check into private residence gathering? I don't mean you, the Premier, you, your government.
Well, that's a good question, Bartley, but of course, we don't direct the enforcement efforts. That's a Justice Department issue. And it's important to remember that it's not politicians that make the decisions on where enforcement lies, but I will say I've got strong views on this, and I'll share them with you if you like. I think that it's important we all follow the rules. And that includes Peguis First Nation as well. And I have to use this opportunity to urge the federal government to please come out of hiding now and say that we can't have 630 plus different public health order sets all over the country on every First Nation. We can't. COVID doesn't discriminate, and neither should we. And the provincial public health orders must be followed, whether it's on reserve or off, because we're all in this together, all of us. And COVID is not something that we want to take to each other at Christmas.
All right. Off the top of my head, and forgive me, I don't recall the number of restaurants that there are in Manitoba, but assuming there's a few thousand based on our population, based on what there is in the country, it looks like this $5 million could work out to a couple of $1,000 per restaurant if they all apply and are all eligible. Do you think that's enough?
Well, I think it's not all restaurants that are impacted, Bartley. As you know, some restaurants, of course, are seasonal, and this would not apply to them. Some already did extensive delivery and had a sole delivery model before, and this isn't designed for them. I think the Chamber will be able to give you a more detailed outline of their focus, but I believe their focused intent here is to assist those restaurants that were forced to change to a different model, you know, away from this people coming in to sit in their restaurant and then having to redefine their model totally to move to delivery is a big new cost for those restaurants. So I think it'll work out to be somewhat more per restaurant. It'll never be enough to make up for the profits that all our small businesses, not just restaurant and food service companies, but many of our small businesses couldn't get as a result of this lockdown. And we understand that. But our comparisons, and they're just finalizing them, I think one of our departments is reviewing them because this is cross-provincial comparisons that of business supports that are being offered right across the country from coast to coast to coast. We're always looking at them. Ontario announced some new programs yesterday, so it's a dynamic that changes. But our listing showed us in the top 3 provinces in virtually every category of COVID investment, and on businesses we're higher than that, higher than third, I should say. So we're always looking to evaluate, make sure we're investing and supporting our small businesses, because Manitoba is a small business economy, as we know, and we want to make sure our small businesses come through this and are able to thrive in the new year after we get through this 90 days of duty that we should take very, very seriously.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Morning, Premier. Is this a one-time payment? Because we're not sure how long we're going to be under the type of restrictions that require dine-in services to close.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Steve. Look, I'm saying 90 days, and you know I'm guessing. I'm looking at the numbers, the projections. I'm looking at the potential for vaccines to come into our province. We know that we're going to have to remain disciplined and dutiful as those vaccines come in. Just because you get a vaccine, there isn't convincing evidence to me that would tell me we should relax our orders for you or anyone else. We're all in this together, and we're going to need to make sure that we continue to respond in the appropriate way. So we're all dealing with an unprecedented, very difficult challenge right now, and I'll only say, if need be, for more additional supports for small businesses and other vulnerable people in our province, we're going to look at those opportunities and continue to invest where it's appropriate.
And we're about 2 weeks away from the expiration of the current public health order. I know no final decision has been made. We're starting to see the numbers go down, but our hospital system is still being taxed very heavily. Do you foresee a lifting of some restrictions after January 8th? And do you foresee a point in the near future where we could lift the restrictions to an extent where people from different households can go to a restaurant or bar again?
Well, as you know, I've been willing to be the guy who gives the bad news from the start of this thing, so I'm going to keep saying it's 90 days of duty we've got in front of us here at least, and we've got to remember that there is COVID all around us, and it's ready to get back into action if it's given the opportunity. So this is crucial right now. It's crucial. I see other provinces now talking about bringing in restrictions on Christmas Day or Boxing Day. Ontario said that yesterday. I think Quebec's talking the same, other provinces as well. We brought our restrictions in earlier, and we're seeing our numbers start to come down. But 2 points on that. I mean, I say that not so that people relax and stop doing the things that got those numbers down. I say it so they'll be motivated to continue, to persevere. That's the point. And so, you know, week over week numbers are an indicator of the direction we're going. And for example, the direction that BC and Manitoba are going in December, this is as of last Tuesday. Our StatsCan numbers, they're delayed a few days. But the change in December nationally was up 13%. And Theresa Tam says she's expecting it to go even higher. But in BC, they came down 18%. Manitoba led the way, coming down 23%. But we were at a very high number before, and we have a lot more to do, a lot more work ahead of us. Conversely, Alberta was up 21%, Ontario up 17%, Quebec up 32%. Why am I telling you this? Because those provinces are coming in with restrictions now, later, and their numbers may take a while to come down. COVID, though, doesn't relax. It's always going to be a threat to us until we have that herd immunity and all of us have that vaccine and so on, and that's months away. So again, my advertisement here is for all Manitobans to be dutiful and diligent, not just in the coming holiday season, but going into the new year. That's where we need to stay focused.
From CTV Winnipeg, Josh.
Good morning, Premier. Josh Crabb from CTV Winnipeg. You spoke a little bit about vaccines. You talked about protecting vulnerable Manitobans. I'm just wondering if you have any more information to share on vaccine rollout for northern and remote Indigenous communities.
Yeah, well, there's ongoing discussions on that, Josh. We have, throughout our processes, we've involved ourselves in discussions with our First Nations partners. Those discussions will continue today, as they do most days. I'll let the vaccine messages go out from those who are making the decisions on prioritization. I think there's an announcement tomorrow about some additional measures. But we're all excited about the vaccines. We have an additional number that are going to be vaccinated here this week, and we're excited about that. But again, I would not want people to relax too soon. I wrote a letter, for example, to all of the Indigenous leaders, including the chief of Peguis, congratulating them for their efforts just a month ago or so. And I'm just extremely disappointed that one of those leaders would now relax and try to celebrate an accomplishment when we're in the middle of a battle here. It's not the time to relax our restrictions. It's not the time to invite people to start moving around the province. And as I've said, Peguis is an important, beautiful community, and but over half the folks from Peguis don't live at Peguis. And so by opening up Christmas celebrations at Peguis, you're encouraging people to travel the province. You're encouraging 60+% actually of Peguis residents live in places like Winnipeg and Selkirk and so on. You're encouraging the possibility of all the work that you've done to this point in time to be undermined by taking this position. And I've asked the Prime Minister to respond. At other levels in our government, we've asked federal officials to step up and make it clear that we can't have provincial health orders undermined.
And still on vaccines, we understand a small amount of vaccine went unused in the first round of the immunization campaign, just due to canceled or missed appointments. I'm wondering if you would like to see better plans in place to make sure that every ounce of this vaccine is getting into someone's arm.
I don't want to see vaccines thrown out for any reason. We've got people out there who need those vaccines. They're life-saving vaccines. I don't want to see any of them thrown out or wasted.
From City News, Stephanie.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Stephanie Lasuk for City News. Just wondering what area of businesses you just targeted, dine-in restaurants, but what area of businesses might be the next priority for some kind of rebate or support from the government?
Well, we're very interested to get more detail from the federal government, Stephanie. I think we all know that our hospitality industries generally have been some of the sectors that have been most significantly impacted. That's why this program today was one that we arrived at with the advice of our business leaders. Clearly, the federal government has committed in its recent financial statements that it's going to offer some support program for hospitality. This could include hotels. We're very interested to get the details. They aren't forthcoming as of yet, but we're looking forward to getting those because we design our programs not to compete with, but to complement what the federal government's doing. And so we've designed specifically our programs to support businesses that where there was a gap initially, where they weren't getting support from the federal government. 10,000 businesses got that support. And now we'll be looking forward to working in complement with the federal government. And I compliment them on the design of their programs, but I want to see them rolled out, and we need the detail from them first.
Okay, and then just a follow-up. You mentioned the 90 days of duty. I just wonder where you're getting this number from. and kind of if you can explain it a little bit more than 90 days.
Well, we have speculation that we're going to get vaccines. We'll believe it when we see it. We're all hopeful. As we get those vaccines and more folks get immunized, there's a danger that people will relax. That's why I'm making the point that don't relax. And the 3 months, it could be argued, is an arbitrary target. But I think people need to be realistic here. And I'm already hearing from some of my colleagues that people are talking about, well, when as soon as I get the vaccine, that mask's off and things like this, or I'm having a party to celebrate. This is not on. We can't relax. We don't have the science yet to know how long the vaccine will be effective. We don't have the science to know if you could still, in fact, give or transmit COVID to someone else, even though vaccinated. And we do know that the vaccine will not work on everyone. Though it's proven that it will work, the question of degrees matters. So each of these things tells me, and I think tells most of us, that we have to stay careful, we have to stay diligent, we have to stay dutiful, and so this is why I referenced that 90 days as a target. Don't let your guard down, because COVID will come back if it's given a chance, and we don't want to give it a chance.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Larry.
Premier, I'd like to go back to the COVID enforcement update that was issued by the province today, and the 35 tickets that were issued in relation just to private gatherings just in the last week. It suggests that there was quite an effort here and must have had some sort of political direction. First of all, are you surprised by the number of tickets, and what kind of use of, and I'd like to also comment on the use of government resources in this way.
Well, I don't accept your preamble. There's not been political direction, Larry. The fact of the matter is we have enforcement people. We've expanded the number who are doing enforcement. They're out there. Some are giving warnings. I think there were close to 300 warnings, so significantly lower number of tickets. But the fact remains that we have public health orders, and we expect people to abide by them, and that's how we're going to protect each other.
Was this based on, I take it that the people doing the enforcement were relying on tips? Are you surprised at the number of residences where there was a fine? And tell me a little bit more about the process. Was it in direct response to tips?
Yeah, sorry, Larry, I don't have the numbers in front of me on the number of tips this past week. We have had that in the past, and I'm sorry I don't have that for you. But I understand the tips continue to come in, and I understand the enforcement officials do rely to some extent on the tips for their enforcement. That being said, if you're having a large gathering that's violating the health orders, you should believe and you should expect that you're going to be fined for doing that. And the point of these public health orders is not that they're there for show. They're there to be effective in protecting people from the actions of others who, frankly, would abuse the public health orders to the detriment of their friends, neighbors, and their community. So I thank the enforcement officials who are doing this job. Some of them didn't sign up for it, quite frankly. We've moved some folks around from different roles within government to help us. But the fact is that they are working to protect all of us, and I would expect people to respect that and to be cognizant that these rules are there to protect all of us.
From Global, Brittany.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Brittany from Global News. I'm just wondering if this dine-in program, if a restaurant was deciding now whether or not to do delivery, but it was something they didn't think they could afford to do in the past, would they be eligible if they just start it now?
Absolutely, Brittany. In fact, that's part of this, I think, is to, and again, I haven't had a chance to personally to get Chuck Davidson over at the Manitoba Chamber and get his input on this, but our departments that have been working with him. And I believe that that's exactly part of the purpose of this program. It's to incentivize adaptation and assist businesses in moving their model over to something that's more practical given the restrictions that we have now and that we may have to have for a while yet.
Thank you. And do you have any specifics on how it will work? Will the money be divided up equally amongst all eligible applicants, sort of like the Hero Pay was, or will it be dependent on business size, et cetera?
I understand that they're working out the details. The Chamber, Economic Development Winnipeg, other advisors in restaurant and food services industry are working together to define the details of how it'll be allocated now. So I won't speak to that except to say that we trust that the design advice they've given us that it will result in a program that'll be helpful to people in these businesses, and then we'll let them work out the details of distribution.
From the Brandon Sun, Colin.
Hi, Mr. Premier. I realize the release says that details are to come in the weeks ahead. Do you have any sort of idea how much financial assistance the average restaurant will be able to get from this rebate program?
Well, we put an estimate on it, Colin, of $5 million, and we know globally that there are literally hundreds and hundreds of restaurants who are either already shifting over to a more delivery-based model or are going to and are planning on it. So we anticipate there'll be a few $1,000s available for each, but that, again, that delivery, the delivery model of the grant will be determined by the business advisors who made the recommendation to us and who are now supporting with our funding.
I also want to double check, will receiving this new rebate preclude any businesses from also receiving the bridge grant?
Absolutely not. In fact, we'll have more to say on that next week, Colin, but our programs aren't designed to be mutually exclusive. In other words, we've layered them so that, for example, a company, Brandon company that applied for the $6,000 GAP program was still eligible to apply for the job, the 50% job subsidy, job support subsidy after that, which we offered through the summer and into the fall, that would have allowed them to get up to $100,000. And that company could also have applied for the bridge financial support as a result of the lockdown that we expanded, as you know, in third week of October, if I recall. And so that would not rule out any of those programs for that company. If that company was, in fact, a restaurant or food service firm, they would also be eligible for this program. So we've designed these programs to be layered, not to be mutually exclusive. So under those programs, companies could receive literally, tens of thousands of dollars of support. But I would emphasize, and I believe most Manitobans support these programs, that this is important support to help these companies bridge through. So they're there to serve us as we come out of COVID and come back to a more normal way of doing business and a normal way of living.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. When it comes to supports for these, for restaurants who are being forced to switch over to pickup or delivery, was this the only avenue considered for these supports? For example, Ontario, on the weekend, they put legislation together. It was passed and went into action on Saturday that caps the amount that third-party delivery services are allowed to charge back to restaurants and caps the amount of, I think it's how much somebody's able to tip a driver. Was there any consideration into those types of actions as well to kind of protect what profits the restaurants themselves are able to get from the deliveries?
Yeah, Ontario's model is one I can't say we gave it great consideration, Josh, but it was in the mix. The difficulty with it is it would be punitive to those companies that have been set up to do delivery or exist to do delivery, and those companies employ people and create jobs for Manitobans. So what we wanted to do was make sure we had new capital and not just penalize those who are already doing deliveries, as the Ontario model does with its cap on pricing.
All right. And for this $5 million, is it retroactive to the beginning of of some of the health orders that were put in, or is it just going forward, the $5 million?
I'll go back to, I think they're talking about December 1st. I could stand corrected on the exact date, Josh, but the idea here is to make it retroactive back to the early days so that the companies that actually already adapted themselves or used innovation and acted quickly aren't punished but are rewarded for having done so.
Our final reporter this morning, Mr. Premier, will be Camille from CBC Radio Canada.
Tu es très tranquille, Camille. Assuming no question from Camille, I'll just conclude by wishing everyone on this call and through you to your viewers, readers, the very best in the holiday season and into the new year. As we have seen over the last number of months, this has been a unique and special year. It's been a tragic year for many families. It's been a hard year for many businesses. It's been a hard year for all of us who value the freedoms that we had to sacrifice in the name of protecting others. But our duty is to do that now and to persevere and to be determined, as Manitobans have been throughout our history. And so I invite all of us to celebrate that, to celebrate not together this year, of course, but to celebrate together separately, to celebrate the heritage that people sacrificed for us to enjoy today and in the future. And I wish all of you and your families the very, very best, not only through the holiday season upcoming, as we celebrate differently, but we celebrate nonetheless, and into the new year as we will celebrate together the rewards that come from doing your duty. All the best from my family to yours.